you kind of know the topic of my presentation. It's not exactly my area of expertise, but I'll kind of get into that. So, but I do know in terms of where Europe fits in, I do know that CPEC has essentially made an invitation to Europe to participate, right? And so, I have some links and stuff like that there. And also to echo some of what Francesca said, I know there was a forum held around that, questioning whether this is East India Company Mark II, right? And so the designs around that kind of fall, for some of the stuff kind of reporting I do, it does fall around how corporate social responsibility comes into these things, right? Now, right now, I don't know if you know what's going on exactly in that, but what used to be known as CSR is now becoming something called ESG. These are environmental, social, and governance factors, right? This is a global thing, but it is a financial services major initiative to protect investors who are increasingly saying we want to invest in certain kinds of things and we want to avoid other things, right? And that can look a number of ways, but essentially, investors want to control how companies behave, and shareholders believe that companies that are ethical sustain their value over their long term. Okay, and so, for example, an example of that is HSBC recently divested from a defense contractor because one of their acquisitions made a certain kind of bomb, and they will not be investing in that. This is kind of how that plays out. This is a small sector. Total assets right now, and this is only in the exchange traded products area. It's growing, however, but it's about 20 billion across 200 products. This is not a big number when we consider that assets under management are in the trillions and trillions. So either way, Europe is definitely finding itself challenged by such investment trends, while the public is making demands for better government and corporate responsibility. This is definitely Europe and North America, but the truth is it's really quite global. And some of the largest asset managers, for example, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink spoke at Davos about this, and it actually made quite a splash. So this is kind of where I intersect, and in a past life, I did a lot of metals and mining and how mining companies integrate with the communities in which they have extraction projects. Right now I do a lot of advanced technologies in capital markets, so this is like the artificial intelligence, quantum computing, this kind of area of things. But I started covering Pakistani natural resources as a result of what I used to do, and when I have recently seen more and more news about it coming through some of my channels, and it made me revisit what's happening there. And that's kind of what ended up bringing me here. On the synth side, I covered tar coal. I heard that Imran Khan had canceled one of the projects, and however, one of the power projects that has tar coal coming from it, that one's continuing. On the Baluchistan side, Gwadar Port, we've heard quite a lot. And significantly, one of the reasons I touched base with it was because of how Saudi was coming in as a partner. And there's some conflicting reports about how China feels about that. I'm not sure anyone really knows. I think it's well known that Saudi has come in as a bit of a bailout partner at a time when, as we heard before, so I don't necessarily have to repeat it, but the account balance right now, Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves are really quite low. So that I think 3 billion has been paid out. That number keeps getting bigger. I think I heard 12 billion recently now. Have you ever heard that every big number is a lie? But at the same time, there's a bit of a bailout mentality. The Saudi energy minister was recently at Gwadar, and I have to say, I find the Pakistani media doing a bang-up job on reporting on some of this stuff, especially when I get into some of the granular details, despite some of the difficulties we hear about. And so I do hear that and this has disappeared a little bit, but apparently the Saudis will be offered investment opportunities in Reko Diq. Now, for those of you that know the Bear Gold, which is a Canadian company, I'm not sure what they think about that. Their annual results come out February 21st. I've seen the preliminary results for the year. There's no mention of Reko Diq. However, on February 21st, there is a shareholder, conference call, and I'm wondering if maybe they would answer some questions about that. right? It is kind of an obligation for them to do so. What's some updates on Reko Diq itself? You might have heard that Pakistani officials are right now scrambling to figure out what the claims on it are. As some of you may be aware, there was quite a loss. There was an arbitration. Baluchistan lost, and now damages are about, it's going to take like 5 months before we know a number. We're seeing numbers like 11 billion. I think that's probably unlikely to be so high, but we'll see how that goes. And also there was an in-camera briefing, and this is what I'd really like to put your attention on. The company had demanded 6 to 7 billion, which now looks like this. So he also expressed concerns that no one was allowed to visit the Sindak copper gold field. So nothing could be said about exact quantity of the mined minerals. Okay, so this sort of lack of access to a provincial government that, as we see, is actually supposed to be able to have access whenever they want through the inspectorate. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the mining law very quickly. The Directorate General of Mines and Minerals is supposed to be the one granting concessions. And this is an international standard. Internationally, the standards are that if you are a mining company, your first port of call should be the region. And so this is some of the stuff they have control over. And then underneath that is the Inspector of Mines, which is supposed to be able to inspect for safety, as far as I understand it, whenever they want to. So concerns arising that they are excluded from this, you have to ask, are these rules being followed? So right now, the main mining areas, there's a list of them, but I would draw your attention to Chagi Hills, in particular as a no-go zone in the context of Pakistan's defense apparatus. And you'll kind of see, the nuclear symbols, where Chagi Hills is, because I'm sure you're aware it was used as a testing site. So where's EU involvement right now? It tends to be very much in the area of development. There's like 40.5 million for refugee affected and hosting areas, but of course they throw in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province as well. Sorry if I mangled the how that's pronounced. There's a 40 million euro apparently for water. These are very small numbers. I mean, they're significant, and I'm sure everyone is appreciative to the EU, but in the context of needing billions and billions of dollars of bailout, and really, I kind of leave it at what are the risk factors that are exposing themselves at the moment. And this is just one specific topic in one area of one of the border disputes. So I recognize that this is quite a, kind of snapshot. But apparently Saudi investment is being welcomed at the federal level, but supposed to be granted under provincial structures. The region is a no-go security zone and borders Afghanistan and Iran, the latter of which Saudi has diplomatic tensions with, which can be attributed to many complex religious, historical, and political factors, of course. But I would like to specifically point out two. One of them is support for rebels in Yemen, as well as groups listed as terrorist organizations, including by the EU. And the other is nuclear policy, for which Saudi has established nuclear weapons arrangements with Pakistan and China. And this is all public information. This, these are known factors. Yeah. Amid widespread speculation that the kingdom is developing its own program. Again, you can find many sources from reputable news organizations looking at this, the New York Times and Reuters and Wall Street Journal. And so what do these risk factors mean for a secular, certainly self-described secular, democracy-leaning, marginalized and impoverished, by definition of the EU, communities that live there? And considering the advancement of these development projects, for which there is, some cynicism, what can or should the EU do about it? And I think these are major challenges. Did I keep it to 10 minutes? Did I make it? Oh, I hope so. I don't. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy.
So may I just add something there? Sure. It's very interesting because there are